Hello, everyone joining. We'll give it a couple minutes for folks to continue to join before we get started. Okay, hello, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to the Windows 10 End of Life, What Comes Next presentation. Today, we're going to talk through, I'll introduce myself, and then we'll talk through the Windows 10 End of Life and what that means. We'll then go through some of the benefits and features of Windows 11. We'll talk through some migration considerations for getting from Windows 10 to Windows 11, as well as touching on some opportunities for modernizing your endpoint management as part of that process. So my name is Phil Schwan. I manage the cloud infrastructure and endpoint team at Netrix. My background is in desktop engineering, going all the way back to the Windows 95 days. Fun fact, I'm also a general class licensed ham operator, so do that in my spare time. So Windows 10 end of life, what does that mean? Well, as of October 14th, 2025, it means no more patches. So monthly updates will no longer be issued by Microsoft for standard Windows 10 machines. It also means that no more security updates will be issued. So vulnerabilities will not be addressed as part of that normal update cycle as well. So Windows updates, including Windows Update for Business and Auto Patch, will no longer publish those cumulative updates for normal distribution through those channels. It also means no new features. So no additional usability or productivity features will be introduced to the operating system. That process will cease at that point and nothing new will be released. And finally, it means no more technical assistance. So as you call in for Microsoft support or enter a support ticket, if your devices are not covered, your devices will not be covered under normal technical assistance at that time. You into life. Well, first of all, Windows will continue to function. Windows will function normally. It's not like you log on October 15th and suddenly you're in a reduced functionality mode or something. The device will continue to function after that point. However, it will be in an unsupported state. If you're running Windows 10 long-term servicing channel or IoT enterprise, those will continue to receive updates according to their normal support structure. So for example, LTSC 2021, which is based on Windows 10 21H2, will continue support through January 12th of 2027. And last, Windows 10 that's running in Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 will continue to be updated. So those will fall under the Extended Security Updates Program, or ESU. What is the ESU? Glad you asked. So the Extended Security Updates Program is a paid program that Microsoft provides for continued support beyond the scheduled end of life. It has several limitations, including the fact that, again, no new features will be released. You can't put in requests for design-related or non-security-related updates to the operating system, and the support is only for security updates and only those under the active support plan. From a cost standpoint, because I mentioned it is a paid program, it costs $61 per device for the first year, and that cost increases. It doubles every year after that up through the third year. So year 2 would be $122. Year 3 would be $244 per supported device. If you're using Intune today or AutoPatch to deploy your Windows updates, you do qualify for a discount. You can get a discount of up to 25% on that cost, so that will help some. If you're a nonprofit as well, you can get special pricing And as I mentioned, Windows 365 and AVD are free. So we'll circle back to that when we talk about modernization and migration at a later point. So moving from Windows 10 on to Windows 11, what are the benefits? What do we gain from that? Windows 11 is designed with a lot of advanced security features. There's a lot of improved performance as part of the operating system. There are a lot of productivity tools and enhancements that are integrated to make it more seamless with the other Microsoft products. And it has compatibility for a lot of the latest hardware and security features. So just going through a handful of these, as I said, Windows 10 is designed to make that security much more seamless and much less disruptive to the end user, as well as keeping up with a lot of the advanced threats that we're seeing out in the environment. And of course, as with all things, it's going to tie into AI to help use that to enhance those capabilities. So one example of that would be the new Smart App Control that was not available in Windows 10 that uses AI to analyze those apps and allow only those apps that are deemed safe to be able to run. For those using Windows Hello for Business, it expands the support for cloud-based trust models to enhance that user experience and that capability. There are a lot of virtualization-based security features that are extended in Windows 11 beyond what Windows 10 provided. And one of those would be Windows Defender Application Guard, as well as a handful of others that use virtualization to isolate potentially unsafe sites or applications and only allow those to run within that virtualized space. One additional feature that is frequently mentioned because it's part of the hardware compatibility is leveraging TPM 2.0. So TPM 2.0 is a requirement for Windows 11, and it's leveraged for a variety of different hardware-based security measures throughout the operating system. As we look at performance improvements, there are a number of different things that look to make it a smoother and more responsive end user experience. Just some highlights for those are faster startup and resume time. I know for my personal Windows 11 device, the amount of time it takes it to boot cold or to restart is much reduced from what it was under Windows 10. Same with coming out of sleep if the system's been put asleep. In conjunction with that, I've noticed that as well with the faster Windows update process. So the update process in Windows 11 is much more efficient now. There's reduced downtime during those updates, and thanks to the Delta updates and a smarter delivery system, coupled with the faster startup times, there's very minimal downtime during any Windows update process. So those improvements aim to provide a smoother and more responsive user experience, particularly on newer hardware configurations. As we look at the productivity enhancements, there are several new ones over Windows 10 that are aimed at improving workflow efficiency, improving user experience, and integrating with the Microsoft's broader ecosystem. So some highlights from the list here: better integration with Microsoft 365. So Windows 11 is designed to work more closely with M365 apps, offering contextual experiences, suggested actions in OneDrive, direct access to Office documents from the Start menu. There are enhancements around the virtual desktop. So from a productivity standpoint, if you've ever used that virtual desktop experience in Windows where you can have different workspaces with different groups of applications, there's easier access to that, better visualizations of open applications, enhanced workspace organization, with things like the snap layouts and snap groups. And an additional great feature that I've actually used myself several times is leveraging Windows 365 Cloud PC as one of those workspaces. So being able to connect to Windows 365 Cloud PC as part of your managed workspaces seamlessly without having to do a separate application launch. And then, of course, the redesigned Start menu, something that's probably the most visible thing to the end user. So the new Start menu, it's centered by default. It promotes a cleaner look and feel. Excuse me. It integrates better with the Microsoft services, as I mentioned before, seeing Office applications and Office documents presented alongside everything else. Taskbar is more customizable. You can pin apps to specific positions. So ultimately, these enhancements collectively aim to streamline workflows, reduce distractions, integrate productivity tools a little more naturally into the operating system, and ultimately make that daily computer experience a little more efficient. So as we look to considerations around how we migrate, there are several areas that we want to take a look at. And some of these we'll dive a little deeper into, but at a high level, we want to make sure that our licensing is in order. We want to make sure, especially if we're ordering new hardware in conjunction with this, that we're receiving the proper licensing for that hardware. For example, if you have an enterprise agreement with Windows 11 enterprise licensing, that licensing model is actually an upgrade scheme model to Windows Pro. So you want to make sure that you're ordering your devices with Windows 11 Professional as part of that licensed machine, even if you're going to reimage that machine upon arrival. There are a number of pre-upgrade hardware preparations that you'll want to walk through, and we'll talk about those a little more in depth in a second, including things like application testing. You want to decide if you're going to do an in-place upgrade of your existing devices, or if you're going to reimage them clean. We'll look at some of the pros and cons around that as well. You want to look at network and content planning as you distribute this new operating system out to all of your devices, and then ultimately figure out how you want to stage this rollout and plan it to get it out to all of your devices. And then, of course, you'll want to make sure that your end users are aware and communicated the changes that are going to be coming in their operating system. So from a pre-upgrade preparation process, one of the biggest things is to review hardware requirements. So we talked about TPM 2.0 being a requirement, and there are some other hardware requirements that you want to make sure are met. Generally speaking, from a resource standpoint, it's comparable to Windows 10. So most of the devices that you've purchased in the last few years should be adequate to run Windows 11. Again, it'll depend on the application load that you're throwing on top of it and other factors. But Microsoft does publish both the requirements and the recommendations on their site, and they're pretty straightforward. Do want to address one thing that's kind of made the rounds in the last week or so. Microsoft did not end support in Windows 11 24H2 for certain Intel processor generations. That was a misinterpretation of the information going around, but the hardware requirements have not changed substantially in the last couple of years. So just wanted to throw that out there. If you're looking to do upgrades to existing hardware, you do want to make sure that your hardware is at the latest firmware. That's always a good practice, regardless of what you're doing to that device. Same with your drivers. You want to make sure the drivers are at their latest version so that they're most likely to make it through an in-place upgrade process. And you want to check your encryption status of your devices. Many enterprises are already using BitLocker drive encryption on their Windows 10 devices today, and that's great, and you should do that. But if you do not have drive encryption enabled and you roll out Windows 11 24H2, by default, it is going to encrypt that drive, and it's going to want to escrow those recovery keys somewhere. And of course, if the device were to go into recovery mode and you don't know where those keys are, or the end user doesn't, they could be left in a state where they're unable to access their device. So you want to make sure you're square on your encryption policies and your encryption processes, and make sure that you're planning for that. And of course, the last is application compatibility. Generally speaking, most applications that work in Windows 10 work just fine in Windows 11 with no modifications. The app compatibility settings in Windows 11 do a really good job of accommodating certain ones that may not necessarily be directly compatible with Windows 11. But generally speaking, almost every application is compatible with Windows 11 if it's compatible with Windows 10. Microsoft does offer assistance via App Assure for getting any remaining applications on board. And this also presents another opportunity, as we discussed, if you needed to use Windows 10 in Windows 365 or Azure Virtual Desktop as a short-term means of continuing to support those applications while you're working to get them upgraded. That would extend the life cycle for another 3 years under the ESU support for those devices. From a content planning standpoint, expect at least 5 or 6 gigabytes for Windows 11 24H2. Again, it's going to vary some, but the reality is it's still a substantial amount of space that's going to be involved. Not only disk space on the drive, but space or content traversing your network. So of course, verify that you have enough free space on the devices that you're looking to upgrade if you're doing an in-place upgrade. Highly recommend that you leverage delivery optimization, or at least some method of peer sharing. But delivery optimization is ideal for this. You'll want to review, if you haven't already implemented that, you want to review your settings and make sure that they are appropriately configured to help that. And you can also, where needed, investigate Microsoft's connected cache. This was previously a feature that was exclusive to Configuration Manager, but now exists as a standalone option. It's very good for designating a system or systems as a cache for that content that can then be distributed via DO to the rest of the devices that are in that area. And last, of course, talk to your network folks. Don't give them a surprise by rolling this out to a large office and not telling them ahead of time that you're going to have a substantial amount of data being pulled down. So from a rollout planning standpoint, we already mentioned from a content perspective, making sure that you're leveraging peer technologies wherever possible for that content. Look at what customizations you may need to introduce for Windows 11. You have a few options, obviously policy-based options that you may want to put in Intune, for example, to customize the operating system post-upgrade. But there also are some capabilities around customizing the actual install during install time, essentially modifying the setups of the INI files that the setup process uses to customize the operating system as it's being installed. So you'll want to investigate those and make sure that you have those tested and implemented and in place prior to full production rollout. Deciding your delivery method is another important approach, whether you're going to be pushing it out as an in-place upgrade, how you're going to get that upgrade to them, whether there's going to be any physical touch on those machines required, or whether this will all be done over the wire. Ensuring that you have a solid plan, especially with remote employees, for how that upgrade is going to be delivered. And then checking your feature update rings. If you're using Intune and or auto patch to deploy, making sure that you have the proper controls in place to be able to stage this rollout appropriately. Just from a recommendation standpoint, as you look at rollout planning, you want to take a best practice approach in doing test pilot production. So starting out with some initial functional testing. Again, if you have Windows 365, this is a great option to use that. Use that virtual PC to do your application testing, to do your settings testing, and so forth. Be able to quickly reset it, not have to worry about shipping hardware all over the place. And then get it in the hands of IT support. Spend some time letting them get used to it, familiar with the look and feel of the operating system if they don't already know it. And then essentially letting them dog food it and do the initial testing, smoke testing. They're going to be the ones that provide you probably the most detailed technical feedback. So leverage that and get that out there first. And then the last would be looking to your application owners, especially for your mission critical applications or your essential apps. Get it in their hands. Again, use something like Windows 365 instead of having to issue them a second PC or get them upgraded before they may be ready. Give them that opportunity to do all of the quality assurance testing they need to do and ensure that all of your mission critical apps are working properly. So once you get through that testing phase, then look to pilot. There are a number of different approaches you can take to pilot. You can do it by geography. So pick a particular office building that you want to do the initial rollout to, or you can roll it out to a business unit. You can choose a particular use case like a remote contractor or remote sales, but have something designated that hopefully captures a good cross section of applications and settings and remote versus on-site and so forth. You want that pilot to really touch on all of the key use cases or key user personas that you have to make sure that once you get to the full production rollout, everything is operating as expected. So once you get to the production rollout, that's where you take that phased approach. And typically, you're not going to throw it all out at once, but you, depending on how the initial testing and piloting goes, you can be really aggressive with the velocity of your production rollout, or you can take it more cautiously. A lot of times this can be done in conjunction with the hardware refresh as well, especially if you know that there's a significant amount of hardware that is not is not compatible with Windows 11, you can take that opportunity to use that hardware refresh to then swap out other hardware that is compatible, refresh that, and use that as a rolling seed of equipment to complete that rollout. A lot of times, in organizations with a large application profile outside of the main core applications, that may be driven by application compatibility. So, as we'll talk about shortly, with moving to more of a modern management approach, you may be looking to migrate hundreds of applications from your configuration manager environment into Intune. And so if you're doing a reset of these devices and onboarding them via autopilot as part of this process, then that application migration may drive that schedule, and you may prioritize the applications to coincide with that phased approach. I've done this with a number of clients and larger clients, and that tends to be a good method to do that instead of waiting until the entire application catalog has been moved. So a real quick word on upgrading versus reimaging, in-place upgrade versus either a wipe and load or some other imaging method. Doing an in-place upgrade is less disruptive ultimately. Your user profile remains intact, your applications remain there, your files remain there. It's essentially just doing an in-place upgrade on the machine, changing the bits out, moving it from Windows 10 to Windows 11. The cons to that are usually when we do an OS upgrade, a major OS upgrade, that's our opportunity to make big changes. Historically speaking, before Windows 10 and the servicing model, every few years you had a new operating system coming out, and we had to have a capital project to get all the machines upgraded. And that was the time where we did all new group policies, and we had to do a bunch of application work and a bunch of settings work. With the servicing model, that removed that as a regular part of our desktop management planning. But this offers one of those opportunities for us to go back and maybe make some of those changes. So a great example would be moving from hybrid join and configuration manager managed into an Intune only, Entra only device profile. The user profile on a hybrid join system is Active Directory based. On an Entra system, it's Entra based, and there's no direct migration of those profiles with normal tool sets. So it really requires putting in place things like OneDrive known folder move and other things to give some portability to that user experience. But a reimage is the proper way to get that transitioned over into that cloud only approach. And we'll talk again about more of that in a second. So again, doing a clean start for reimaging, making a move to modern management, leveraging hardware replacements. But again, it's going to be more disruptive for the end user. Hardware replacement, depending on how you do it, if it's side by side, it may be minimally disruptive. They may be able to bring up the new system, get everything logged in, make sure everything is there before they shut down the other machine and send it off to be repurposed. Whereas doing it, in place via device reset, for example, for autopilot, that machine's going to be down for a while. It could be, anywhere from 20 or 30 minutes to, an hour and a half or more. It depends on all of the details that are involved, the applications that come down and so forth. And applications are another part of that. So over time, more and more applications get onto a system depending on how controlled the environment is. And quite frankly, whether the users have admin rights. They may have installed quite a number of applications on there that IT wasn't aware of or didn't plan for or didn't deliver. When that machine comes back up after a reimage or a reset, unless we push those applications back down via Intune or something similar, those applications won't be there, and the user will now have to go and find those. Now, as we move to a modern management scenario and we have those applications in Intune, we may be able to make those available as an application catalog, and they can go into the company portal and they can install those applications on demand without having to worry about admin rights. So as I said, mentioned a lot of times, this is a good opportunity to work towards modernization of your endpoint management. If you're still on legacy on-premise solutions, still using configuration manager, and this is the time where you really want to make that transition to Intune and start to leverage cloud-only management, this is a great time to do that. Be advised, though, that does take some careful planning. So, for example, there's no set way at this moment in time easily to do both an upgrade to Windows 11 and a reset and onboarding via autopilot all at the same time. A lot of times, the most effective means of doing that is to do an upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11 and then a reset to onboard via autopilot, or vice versa. You can do a reset and onboard via Windows 10 and then do the in-place upgrade to Windows 11 pushed out from Intune. There are some caveats. There are always some engineering fun things that we can do to shorten that or make that process simpler, but at the expense of some complexity in the engineering part of it. But generally speaking, it's a two-part process, so you want to plan accordingly. Autopilot provisioning, though, really does make this more effective across the wire. Again, especially if you're looking to move to that Entra-only configuration where you don't need to worry about trying to hybrid join, especially remotely, and having to deal with pre-logon authentication VPN connections and all the timing challenges that are associated with a hybrid join autopilot. But being able to reset these devices and reprovision them over the wire while they're remote is a much easier experience to deal with going forward. And then, as I mentioned multiple times throughout this presentation, that opportunity to embrace desktop as a service as well, to be able to use BYOD hardware or aging hardware and extend that hardware lifecycle while providing a robust managed Windows 11 experience via Windows 365 or Azure Virtual Desktop, including multi-session hosts in AVD, where you need to take advantage of scale for that. So that's all I have for Windows 10 and Windows 11 for today. So I'll open it up here and just ask if there are any questions. I'll check the chat here and see if there's anything we can address. Okay, so if I have Windows 10 devices that are not compatible for Windows 11 upgrade due to hardware restrictions, would you recommend completely replacing the device or just the component that is restricting the upgrade? Honestly, that's a cost question. It depends on what it is that you need to upgrade as part of that, and whether it would be less expensive to just replace the device or to have to replace that at scale across those devices. Again, one consideration is if you have a largely mobile workforce and you're having to do those replacements, that means most likely they're going to have to bring that device in to have it done, or they're going to have to ship it in, and you're going to have to deal with both the shipping out or back and shipping out costs. It really is largely a cost exercise. And then how long do you think that hardware lifecycle would extend, even if it does meet the minimum requirements? If it's an aging piece of hardware, if it's, if the processor is borderline, it may not be worth extending that life cycle. But again, you also can balance that against, am I buying myself, a year or two on that device under Windows 11, maybe just squeaking by, versus the cost it would be to pay for the extended support for the system. So, as with most things, it depends on how much money it is and the scale that we're talking. So, any other questions? We'll give a few minutes for folks to drop them in the chat there. Okay. I'll give one more minute. And again, just a reminder that a lot of times efforts like this invite the opportunity to modernize and upgrade things, to take a fresh look at your settings. Again, like I said, I've been around since doing this in Windows 95 when these weren't even domain joined systems, but looking at always doing those group policy refreshes and rationalization. And this is another opportunity to take a fresh look at that and to transition some of these things into Intune and move towards a cloud managed platform. Leveraging the Windows 365 and AVD on top of that, whether it's at the start and using that as a test bed, whether it's a remediation option to extend support for certain applications that just can't be upgraded yet, or whether it's just part of that larger strategy of working alongside modern hardware, modern physical hardware, to provide a secure and customized desktop experience for your users. This is a great time to investigate that as part of those efforts. All right, see another one. Hey, Jason. We have some Gen 9 Lenovo laptops that have 16 gigs of RAM. After the upgrade from Windows 10, we see issues with audio-visual programs like Teams and Zoom. Any ideas? We have updated firmware and drivers. Depending on, I would say most often I've seen that for Teams to operate at an optimum, moving to 32 gig of RAM tends to be better. It really depends on the level of usage involved. I know even as you look at Windows 365 and AVD, the recommendations trend towards 32 gig of RAM if you're going to be a heavy Teams AV user. So I would consider upgrading the RAM in those devices for better performance, or as you procure new hardware, making sure that that you at least have 32 gigs of RAM in them. I know I just talked to a client yesterday that they've spec'd out their latest machines that they're ordering for hardware refresh at 64 gig. So 16 gig is supported, absolutely. Just may not be the ideal experience for that. Okay, we'll give another minute for any other questions. Okay, a couple more seconds. All right, we do have another question about expanding on the Windows 10 to Windows 11 licensing for a business and how to verify the license will work. Fundamentally, there are kind of two licenses outside of education. That's kind of separate. Two main licenses. You're either a home or consumer license, or you're a pro business license. If you have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, I will caveat this by saying I'm not a licensing expert. But if you have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, your enterprise licensing for Windows 11 is an extension or an upgrade of the Windows Professional license. So when you order hardware, you do need to order hardware with a pro license that is then upgraded to enterprise as part of your enterprise agreement. There's no separate enterprise licensing apart, that's completely separated from the hardware. Beyond that, you would want to talk to your Microsoft representative more about the licensing, because there are some complexities there for sure, and some nuances that you'll want to investigate. Any other questions? How much more security is in Windows 10, Windows 11 compared to Windows 10? So a combination of things. A lot of the security features that are in Windows 10 are enhanced in Windows 11. They've expanded the capabilities of it. They've expanded the integration into the operating system. Some of them were add-ons that are now part of the core operating system. And then, of course, the introduction of AI-based security tools into it. Their support for the new Proton processors, for the AI integrated, or sorry, the CPU security integration, which was not available in Windows 10. Trying to think what some of the other ones are off the top of my head here. Yeah, it's a combination of enhancements to the existing security stack and further integration of some of the other the other tool sets. Okay, any other questions? Give it a couple more seconds. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. Want to thank everybody for joining us for this today. If you need any additional information, feel free to reach out. We'll be sending out some information after this as well regarding a Windows 11 assessment that we can do to help your company get ready for this transition or help you with one that's already in flight. But appreciate everybody's time today. Everybody has a great day, and thank you again for joining us.